these are not ordinary times, and I said yesterday that this is a very fluid and rapidly evolving situation, and the key is not so much what we do at any point in time, but how swiftly we adjust and recalibrate our plans and actions. And so just in the last 24 hours, we have seen an accelerating trend in the infection among PRC nationals from Hubei province. Right, within Singapore itself, we have had a near doubling of imported cases overnight. All of the cases confirmed in Singapore are imported, and all of them are Chinese nationals from Hubei. Within China itself, the rate is also accelerating. The numbers are increasing overnight as well. And the infection in other Chinese cities too originate from Hubei. So it is clear there is a heightened risk of Hubei travelers, and that risk posed to Singapore. And that's why the task force met this morning and we've decided to take additional measures on top of what we had announced yesterday to protect ourselves. Right? So just to quickly summarize, firstly, there are travelers from Hubei who are now in Singapore. I think someone from the media asked about this yesterday, and we said we were in the process of reaching out to them. So there are indeed 2,000 of them still here in Singapore. Some are Singaporeans and PRs back from Hubei, and some are tourists. So we will assess them, and for those who are of higher risk, namely they had been here more recently and during the incubation period, we will quarantine them. Secondly, there will be a group of returning residents and long-term pass holders. These are people who are based in Singapore. They have now gone to China and will be in the process of coming back after the holidays. Right? They were either traveling in Hubei, perhaps, or would hold PRC passports issued in Hubei. In fact, we also talked about this group yesterday. Right? We said these are people who are traveling in China, coming back. We wanted employers to take precautions when they come back. But now we are again taking an additional step to quarantine all of those who had specific travel history in Hubei and who hold passports, PRC passports issued in Hubei. So that's the second thing we are doing. Right? So that takes care of the stock in Singapore, and those who are based here may have traveled over to China, particularly Hubei, and then will be in the process of coming back after the new year. Thirdly, we are looking at new arrivals, all new visitors. The numbers have already come down because of all the measures taken by China and Singapore. But given the heightened risk, we don't want to leave anything to chance, so we will not allow entry of any new visitor who has had recent travel history in Hubei or is holding a PRC passport issued in Hubei. No entry, nor will we allow transit through Singapore. The ICA will also not issue any more new visas, and they will suspend all visas that have been issued previously. Right, so that's the position we are taking. 3 additional measures on top of the 3 that we had announced today because of the heightened risk. I said yesterday that we have a comprehensive plan in place, and we have contingencies covering, we have drawer plans covering all different contingencies. So these were measures that are part of our plans, and because of the escalating situation, we have decided to activate them now. The point is, as I said, the situation is really evolving rapidly. There's new information coming up by the hour, by the day, and we have to constantly stay on top of this. So we should be mindful that, although I don't want to meet like this, we have to get used to the fact that there will be constant updates coming, right? New information about how the virus is evolving in China, outside of China, and what additional measures we have to take to protect ourselves. For now, the latest assessment is that this virus may well be more transmissible than SARS, although as of now, the assessment is that the fatality rate is still lower. But again, this can change subsequently in the future. We cannot tell how this will evolve. And I know we sometimes compare to SARS, but this may well be a very different thing from SARS. It may evolve in a very different way, including the possibility, as was raised yesterday, and as the Chinese have raised, that there may be a risk of spread before symptoms show. Right? So this is the current situation. It is evolving rapidly, and we have to constantly adjust and recalibrate our position each time. We will be doing this. The government task force, the ministerial task force is meeting constantly. We are always updating our assessments all the time, and then we will adjust as we go along and as new information comes about. I think what's critical is that we all stay calm, we stay vigilant, with vigilant monitoring, with the evidence-based approach that we are taking, and with constant adjustments of new measures that are needed to protect Singaporeans and to ensure the overall welfare of Singaporeans is safeguarded. That's our primary aim, and that remains the case today. For now, I want to emphasize there is no evidence of community spread in Singapore. Right? There is not. So our overall aim is still to contain the situation and minimize the risk of community spread. And these additional measures will help us achieve this goal. But we should be prepared because it is evolving so rapidly. We should be prepared that the situation can worsen. But as I've said, we are monitoring and we will take further actions if and when necessary. I'm happy to take any questions from you.
How long do you expect these measures to be in place? Are we talking about days, weeks, or months?
Which measures?
The ones
The ones today or the ones yesterday?
all the measures that you have introduced.
So they will be in place for as long as necessary, right? We are looking at evidence, we are looking at risk. So long as there is a risk and there is evidence of the risk being there to Singapore and Singaporeans, the measures will remain.
Hi, about the third measure to deny entry for new visitors, like some might say that it's quite a bold decision. What is the government's intentions behind that measure? Well,
as I said earlier, if you look at, we don't rush into any particular move just because of a knee-jerk reaction, right? We look at data, we look at evidence, and we look at risk. And all the evidence, I mean, there are drawer plans in place, and these were part of our drawer plans as well. But as we have been monitoring the situation day by day, all of the information gathered so far suggests that there is heightened risk from Hubei travelers, and we have to activate this plan. And that's why we've decided to do so now.
What would you say to people who call it a travel ban? Is that what it is?
It is what it is. It is, we are not allowing entry for all new visitors, right, who have recent travel to Hubei and who hold PRC passports issued in Hubei. That's what it is. Why? Because there is a risk, and the risk is real. It's not something that it's not something that happened overnight. It's something that we deliberated over. We looked at the data, we looked at the evidence, and we decided that there is sufficient evidence of a real risk to Singaporeans, a real risk of this creating community spread of the virus within Singapore. And therefore, we have to take actions.
Minister, as fears increase, right, are there any concerns of irresponsible travellers who might not give accurate declarations or who may choose to evade some of these new measures that are in place?
You mean irresponsible travellers from?
From other parts of China, for example.
So I should add, we are doing this now for Hubei travellers. So we have identified those with recent travel history in Hubei, as well as those with PRC passports issued in Hubei. That's because we have identified that as the main risk and heightened risk.
But we rely on these travellers to declare that they have been.
I would say, but we are also watching the situation in China very closely. And if the situation worsens in China, if this spreads outside of Hubei, it has to some extent, but not to the same extent as what's happened in Hubei. Right? But if there is widespread or if there's community spread outside of Hubei in other cities, in other provinces, then we will have to update our measures accordingly as well.
Are there any Singaporeans stuck in Wuhan, and are you planning on having evacuation measures? For example, South Korea has said that it is doing something of the sort today.
This was a question asked yesterday as well, and we've said that our Beijing embassy is in touch with all the Singaporeans who are still in Hubei province, and we are providing assistance, working together with the Chinese authorities to help them come back to Singapore.
Minister, you said yesterday, you cautioned yesterday against overreaction and xenophobia. But now today there's this entry prohibition, and you have said that you could update the measures. How would you explain that to the public, especially if more extreme measures are taken?
So that's why I think they are entirely consistent. We didn't rush into this from day one, right? We didn't move in a knee-jerk way. We are considered, we study the evidence, but where the evidence is real and the risks are real to Singapore and Singaporeans, I think we have to make a decision and we have to move. And because this situation is evolving so rapidly, I think Singaporeans have to expect that they may well have new updates by the day, by the week, because you never know how the situation can worsen. Of course, we would all like it to stabilize and eventually for this to go away, as SARS did after a few months. We don't know what will happen, but we have to be psychologically prepared. It can worsen, and again, we are consistent with our overall approach, right? We monitor vigilantly, we look at the evidence and data, we assess the risk, and then we look at appropriate measures that need to be put in place according to risk.
Minister, are there government measures in place to help those who are economically going to be impacted by these travel restrictions?
Yes, there are. We know that there will be many who will have to be subject to quarantine. Right? So already we provide an allowance for those who are in quarantine. It will be $100 a day for those in quarantine. It will be given to the employer for those working. It will be given to the individual for those who are self-employed. So that is just one measure, right? For those who are subject to quarantine, certainly there will be an impact, and that allowance is one measure. As I said yesterday, we are looking at other potential economic measures to help those who are affected, vulnerable groups, affected sectors of the economy, and we will see what else needs to be done.
Currently, are there any of our healthcare workers among the pending suspect cases?
Yeah, I think you have to look at, it's not in the confirmed cases, the suspect cases, you will have to check with the officials later. I'm sure they will provide you a clarification on that.
Minister, could you give us a sense of the draw plans that you have? You spoke about these draw plans. What is the next step beyond this prohibition for Wuhan, for Hubei issued passports?
I don't really want to get into all the details, but like I said, I mentioned something just now, I think which is something on our minds, because whatever measure you have for Hubei, or whatever we are taking now, specific to the risk in Hubei, but the situation may go beyond Hubei. I mean, the Chinese are going all out to contain it within Hubei, but you can never tell. If it goes beyond Hubei, then certainly the measures that we have in place have to be updated and applied to other cities, other provinces where we see community spread of the virus. So that's one drawer plan, but there will be others.
Could you give us an idea of how many Singaporeans as of now are in Wuhan/Hubei?
I think the officials will provide clarification subsequently on that.
Can I just invite a last
Yeah.
question? Minister, how exactly will you determine the travel history besides looking at the issue of the issue in Hubei? Are we flipping through like immigration stamps? Isn't that pretty tedious?
So that again, when you talk about the restriction of travel, and we are not allowing entry for those with travel history to Hubei. This was the same question that was asked earlier. PRC passports issued in Hubei is very clear, straightforward. We will use that as one indicator. If you have a PRC passport not issued in Hubei, right, and you came from other cities, we require you to declare travel history. Will there be people, irresponsible travelers who may not declare upfront? Maybe, right? But it's that's why it's not just based on declaration alone. We have different multiple layers of defense. We have medical teams deployed at the Aero Bridge to pick up passengers they see who look unwell. We have thermal scanners in place at the piers to detect and pick people up, right? And again, at the immigration checkpoint, the ICA officer looking at them can check the passport history, can look at what has been done, and they can, query, ask questions, and get more information from these visitors. So there are different layers of checks in place, right? And in the end, as I said before, the most important layer of defense is still at the individual level, right? All of us, visitor or resident in Singapore, all of us have to be socially responsible. And anyone who shows symptoms, step forward immediately, go and see a doctor quickly, wear a mask if you are ill, and then we have a system in place to detect, isolate, and contain the situation. I think for now, our overall posture, and all of us, all Singaporeans have to work together at this. Work at containing the spread of the virus and minimize the risk of this spreading within our community. It has not spread within Singapore yet. It is still with specific individuals, and we have now identified the source of that risk, or the group of people. We are quarantining them, and we are not allowing more of them to come into Singapore. That's containment measures. And we hope these containment measures will help minimize the risk of a spread within Singapore.